What if I told you that even if you worked every single day of your entire life, never spent a dollar, never took a break, and then repeated that same life over and over again, you still might not earn as much money as one person has right now? That person is Elon Musk. And the question we're answering today sounds almost impossible. How many full lifetimes would it take to have as much money as Elon Musk? Because money like this is too big for the human brain to really understand. We can understand $1,000, we can even understand $1,000,000. But once you get into billions, something breaks. We hear $1,000,000 and think, a lot of money. We hear $1,000,000,000 and we think even more money. There's a disconnect. So let's put that into perspective of time. 1,000,000 seconds is about 11 days. 1,000,000,000 seconds is over 31 years. It's the same unit of measurement, but completely different realities. And Elon Musk isn't worth millions. He isn't worth billions. He's worth hundreds of billions, around $850 billion. But even that number doesn't really feel real, and we don't really grasp it. So instead of thinking about it as money, we're going to convert it into something every human experiences: life. Because everyone understands what a lifetime is. A lifetime means decades of effort. Waking up early, going to work, getting paid, paying bills, repeating it again and again and again for years. So let's define one lifetime in terms of wealth as clearly as possible. Imagine someone earns $50,000 a year. That's a realistic full-time income for many people. And for the sake of easy math, now imagine they work 40 years. And for this comparison, let's give them an impossible advantage. They save every single dollar. No spending on anything. No rent, no food, no taxes, nothing. Just pure savings. At $50,000 a year for 40 years, that equals $2 million in one lifetime. That's 40 years of life compressed into a single number. One lifetime equals $2 million. Now we can finally start the comparison. Elon Musk's estimated wealth is around $850 billion. So the question becomes, how many lifetimes of work would it take to reach that? Most people might guess a few thousand, maybe tens of thousands. But the real answer is far beyond that. Because when you divide 850 billion by 2 million, the result is 425,000 lifetimes. That means the average worker would need to live an entire life from birth to death, work 40 years in between, and save every single dollar, then repeat that entire process 425,000 times. Now, let's pause and think about that. That's longer than humans have even existed. But it gets even more extreme because that comparison was based on a $50,000 yearly income. For billions of people around the world, even that number is far too high. In some of the lowest income parts of the world, people survive on around $2 a day. That's about $700 a year. Now imagine that same 40-year lifetime at that level of income. $700 a year for 40 years equals $28,000 for an entire lifetime. That is not a career. That is not a comfortable life. That is everything a person earns across decades of survival. Now compare that to $850 billion. At that income level, the number becomes almost unimaginable. It would take more than 30 million lifetimes to have as much money as Elon Musk. 30 million full human lives. And if we convert that into years, one lifetime is about 80 years, so 30 million lifetimes times 80 years, that's 2.4 billion years. That is just not large. That is planetary scale. 2.4 billion years is nearly half the age of the Earth. Think about that for a second. One person's fortune equals billions of years of labor at the lowest income levels on the planet, and hundreds of thousands of lifetimes even at average income levels. So how is that even possible? The answer is that wealth at this level doesn't come from salary. It doesn't come from working more hours. It doesn't come from earning a higher wage or having a fancy degree. because salary is limited by time. There's only 24 hours in a day, only so many working years in a life. That creates a cap on your potential earnings. Even the highest salaries in the world are still bound by time. But extreme wealth doesn't work that way. At this level, wealth comes from ownership. Ownership of companies, ownership of systems, and taking advantage of everything you legally can. Ownership of assets that grow in value over time. When you own something like a company, you don't need to work more hours for it to grow. Your employees do. If the company becomes more valuable, your wealth increases automatically, no extra labor required by the owner. That's where the difference begins, because labor scales slowly. 1 hour equals 1 hour of pay. But ownership scales exponentially. So if the company goes up in value, the owner's wealth increases. A 1% increase on a small amount is nothing, so the 1% increase on your annual raise is nothing. A 1% increase on hundreds of billions of dollars is enormous. That's why the gap between ordinary income and extreme wealth becomes so large. One system is tied to time. The other is tied to scale. One grows linearly in a straight line, and the other grows exponentially, multiplying from its start. And over time, that difference becomes almost impossible to measure in human terms. That's how you end up with numbers like 425,000 lifetimes, or 30 million lifetimes, or billions of years of labor. Not because someone worked billions of years or worked harder. The person doing the manual labor is working harder. It's not even the difference in the work they do. A doctor does extremely important work and they have a very high-valued skill. But even the smartest people are often in a linear system. But because the insanely wealthy are in a system that scales in a completely different way, the owner amasses more wealth in less time. So when you hear a number like $850 billion, don't think of it as just wealth. Think of it as a scale so large that it stops fitting inside normal human experiences. And that's the real answer to the question, not just how many lifetimes it takes to earn it, but the realization that wealth at this level operates in a completely different reality. One built on ownership, not labor. One on systems, not hours. One on scale, not time. And once you understand that, you stop seeing money the same way again. If you enjoyed this video, give us a like and subscribe for more.